Marius, again, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. Very exciting topic, and we're thrilled to that you're joining us. As a starting point, can you just give us an overview of your work at SAXON Q and the exciting things you're up to?
Yeah, happy to tell you about SAXON Q. We are a deep tech startup. We're 5 years old now, and we build quantum computers based on NV centers in diamond. So generally color centers in a wide gap transparent semiconductor. But the specific spin system that we use for our quantum computers is the NV center in diamond. And it's a full stack company. So we built this computer from scratch. The core of it is, of course, a diamond chip with the qubits. And the computer is a full stack software, and you can execute quantum code on the chip.
And, I read your recent post on LinkedIn. It was quite fascinating, and the responses were actually quite interesting also. People talking about different applications. And it seems like the diamond evolution, the evolution of growing diamonds has become very significant to the SAXON Q product. A lot of our viewers and listeners understand a little bit about NV centers and their relationship to Qubit locations, and I gather that's critical to your product.
Absolutely. The core of the quantum computer is the diamond chip. The diamond chip hosts all the qubits, and we were indeed very pleased with the response to our announcement of a 128 or 512 qubit quantum computer based on the NV centers. Just to be clear here, we need to distinguish between the core that we have, which is the qubit register, and the number of cores. So currently we ship 16 cores of 8 qubits, and then we go to 32 cores of 16 qubits, and eventually we will have 32 qubits and up to 6428 in the different generations. So we increase the number of qubits, of course, that can be entangled. But in our view, it's extremely important to have many of these quantum computers, because you will have many users, you have problems that can be separated, they can be worked in parallel. And let's not forget, a quantum computer always gives a statistical result. By definition, computations need to be repeated in order to give that statistical result. And that repetition normally is done on the same quantum computer, but we can do the repetitions in parallel in these cores and accelerate the calculation. But coming back to your question, the diamond chip that we use harbors the qubits in the following way. The NV center itself is a lattice defect in the diamond. So let's just assume the perfect diamond with a tetragonal arrangement of the tetragonal bonding of the carbon atoms. And then we replace one carbon atom with a nitrogen atom. And next to it must be the V, the vacancy. So it's a two-side defect. So defect complex already. In detail, it needs to be negatively charged. And this is not a trivial task, because when you think about, this is the band gap of the diamond, here's the valence band, here are all the electrons, and then you have the conduction band. It's a wide band gap. It's more than 5 electron volts. So it's very unlikely that there are electrons here. The NV center has a level in the middle. So the Fermi level, the chemical potential, where the electrons are, it needs to be high enough. Now, the diamond is typically a p-type material, and it's not so easy to dope it n-type, which holds back diamond it's a very ideal material for high-power electronics, for example. But the n-type is a little difficult and not so easy, but we dope it, but the electrons fall down into the NV center, and we make negatively charged stable negatively charged NV centers with our patented process of sulfur doping. So there are two things necessary for creating our NV centers, which is the nitrogen and the sulfur doping, which helps to give the negative charge and also to attach the vacancy with a very high yield.
So that doping is a post-growth treatment. You're getting the grown diamond in some condition, and then you are doping it yourself.
Yeah, we do that ourselves, but we source the diamond. We are currently not growing our own diamonds, but we source the diamond as a chip with the hope, which is mostly fulfilled but not always, with the hope that it is as clean as possible. So there should be ideally only carbon in the diamond. But we know that it's impossible to make carbon that is diamond that only has carbon. There are other impurities in there. We need to have diamond that has as little as possible impurities in there because we dope it ourselves. We dope it only very locally. So we're adding only single atoms, like one NV center is one nitrogen implanted. And then if you have two NVs, so that's 8 qubits together with the 13 carbon nuclei. We can get into that detail a little bit later. And then we make a second NV center to have a core with 16 qubits. And then if you have 2 by 2 NV centers, you have 4 times 8, like 32 qubits or so. But this area, they're very close together, is much less than 1 square micrometer. So we use of a chip, which has a few square millimeters, say, only a very small part.
LGD in Tech is now LattiSpec, a global tech diamond marketplace for buyers and sellers. From diamond material to subcomponents to equipment, post-growth treatment, and services, LattiSpec helps bring more transparency and speed to the technology-grade grown diamond supply chain. Built for aerospace, defense, semiconductors, quantum, photonics, optics, and more, LattiSpec connects you with verified global suppliers across 10 verticals. LattiSpec is where the tech diamond market connects.
You said earlier you're shipping systems with multiple qubits in them. Does that mean multiple chips in those computers?
That's an extremely good question. Yes. At this point, each core, which is, if you want, its own quantum computer, each core has its own chip right now. But I have said, since we need less than a square micrometer for these registers, we will, on a roadmap, we will build these cores on a single chip. So on a single chip, you can make 1,000 cores. That's more a question of the wiring than making the qubit registers. And that will make it extremely efficient because you have 1,000 quantum computers working in parallel on one diamond chip. There is a lot of real estate on a square millimeter diamond chip for a lot of qubits because qubit is atomically small.
Okay, yeah. So that's a lot of computing power, more than we've ever seen before.
That's the target. Absolutely, yeah.
Without revealing any trade secrets, what types of customers are interested or are receiving your products already using this technology?
Well, that's not a big secret. We have customers from the research area, let's say. The German aerospace runs a quantum computer. We're delivering the next one this year. And a Fraunhofer Institute, that's kind of like a public-private partnership thing on robotics. This particular institute does robotics, runs one of our quantum computers. And since our announcement, we have a lot of interest, and it reaches from cancer diagnostics, which is kind of like an image classification problem, to topics like public safety, defense as well, and a lot of HPC integration. How do we get this into the high-performance computing center? And there, the typical thinking right now is to add a quantum computer to HPC. In HPC, you have 10, 20,000 GPUs working together. So you will need not one quantum computer, but you will need 10,000. So we need to have a technology that delivers thousands, if not millions, of quantum computers eventually. And in my view, this can only be a semiconductor fabrication-based technology and a semiconductor technology. And we should maybe say for our listeners that the computers that we ship, they work at ambient condition. So there's no cooling involved. These qubits work in a diamond at room temperature. And also ambient condition means also in air. So there is no vacuum involved or so. The chip is, say, sufficiently passivated to work in normal air at room temperature. Or to be precise, since there's electronics in that box, the temperature is maybe 30 degrees because there's a PC that organizes everything or something like that, So it's a little warmer than room temperature, actually, if you want to be precise. But to summarize this, quantum computers will go everywhere, and we have very broad interest to integrate this into systems right now. Yeah.
And you bring up a major point, particularly poignant to this moment in time, and that is the cooling systems required to run giant server farms, for example, are becoming unsustainable. And what your development is ushering in is basically room temperature processing, and without any kind of cryogenics required, and also a much smaller footprint.
Absolutely. Those are kind of three issues you bring up here. Let's talk about the footprint first. Our quantum computer is the smallest in the world. It's a really simple system compared to other setups which require, say, heavy optical tables or vacuum and cryogenic, very sophisticated cryogenic equipment. So we will further reduce our footprint tremendously to stuff more and more quantum computers into one server rack. So currently we do like 16, but it will be powers of 2. Like eventually we'll have 1,000 computers in a box. Anyway, the energy aspect, the power consumption aspect is extremely important. And there are two aspects: the comparison of a quantum computer per se to classical computing, like GPUs, CPUs. And the other aspect is our quantum computer compared to other quantum computers. So that's the easy one. Our computer uses the least power of any quantum computer because it is just such a simple system. If you look at, say IBM, it's a public number, needs 50 kilowatt for the dilution cryostat, 50,000 watt. And most of it goes into the periphery, not even into the quantum computing. Yeah. And our quantum computer, with a few less qubits, but if we have the multicore system with a comparable number of qubits, we have maybe 2 kilowatt. Yeah, one of these chips needs 100 watt or something like that. So it's orders of magnitude smaller. The interesting thing eventually is how does the energy consumption of quantum computing compare to GPUs and what the HPC does? And that is the easiest quantum advantage that you can achieve by making the same calculation, quantum or classical, and the quantum computer will use less energy because it is more efficient regarding energy use. The basic idea, where does the GPU lose the energy? The GPU loses the energy moving all the bits through the memory. In a quantum computer, you don't move the information. You only you don't move electrons. You move only information. And ideally, it is even dissipation less. Ideally, it doesn't need any energy because it's reversible. But that's thermodynamically in praxis not the case. But we target to have a quantum calculation that is more energy efficient for the same result than a classical calculation. And that's the first quantum advantage you can achieve. That doesn't mean yet you're cracking every code and stuff like that, but it is, in a practical sense, extremely important because, sure, the energy use of artificial intelligence is a big issue. And hey, diamond growers in the world, give us better material. We are in connection with a number of companies and discuss with them the needs for quantum computing. Most chips are kind of like more for quantum sensing. It's the easier thing. Yeah, you have a lot of NV centers. A lot of NV centers give you a lot of signal and this. But this is a lower hanging fruit for the diamond community. The much bigger, in terms of economics, gain you can get from the quantum computing if you really control the individual atoms here. And it's a harder task than the sensing, but it's worth it. And that's our path.